Let's throw it open. Comments, questions, observations, complaints? Yes. Have you got a microphone?
Yeah, I'd like to address a question to Ed Vaizey and the others may be able to comment, but you said that you want to get power down to local councils, but at the same breath you're allowing schools to be built by anyone but local authorities, and in the 80s local councils were more or less emasculated of power. So why do we think that power will be able to trickle back? And it's a result of the emasculation that the people have not bothered to go into local council.
Do you want to take a few? Or?
No, let's do that. I will later on take a clumps of them, but I think that's interesting because I mean you did talk about localism a lot, and it has. I mean, it's for years politicians have been talking about devolving power. It has never really happened, has it? Why?
Well, I think
can it be different now?
No, I think it was happening. I think the last Conservative government it was happening with grant-maintained schools and fund holding for GPs. These were fantastic ideas that were really beginning to work until the Labour government came in and, for ideological reasons, absolutely changed them. But I'm not saying. My approach, our approach, is to push power down to the right level, to the people who we think are the right people to exercise that kind of power. So it's not saying, here's an institution called a local council, we'll push more power down to them and stop it there. If we believe that parents or charities can exercise power, then they are the right people to do that. And sometimes a local council can be a block. But as I say, I mean, locally elected police commissioners will give power back to the people in terms of being able to elect people who are accountable to them in terms of how local policing is organised. So there are different ways of doing it, but the fundamental point is to push power away from Whitehall and not have a one-size-fits-all approach to these kind of issues like education. Personally speaking, and this is not party policy, personally speaking, I would like to see councils have more power. I'd certainly like to see them have control of health and police, actually. But that's just a personal view.
And Peter, that would be quite radical stuff, wouldn't it, if that happened for real? Power down to the little platoons and voluntary groups taking over all the sorts of things that you don't want the state doing.
It's flim-flam, and in any case, the Tory Heath Walker reforms in local government in 1974, which some of us remember, destroyed local government in this country pretty much permanently. There isn't any left. Roy Jenkins had previously destroyed local policing, so there are no local police forces. Imagine, here we are in the Thames Valley. You elect local police commissioners, you'll simply institutionalise the conflict between, say, Reading and Oxford for resources, without in any way altering the fact that it's the laws of the country, including the moronic Police and Criminal Evidence Act of 1984, I mentioned the date to draw attention to the party which passed it, which prevents the police from doing their job. So I don't. These are symbolic things put forward by a party which dares not advance any national ideas. It's part of the way in which they avoid the debate about the things which actually need to be discussed. Who runs the country? By the point about the Disability Discrimination Act, I must. It's neither an argument for or against it. If this country wants to legislate against discrimination, it can do so itself. It doesn't have to be told what to do by a group of unelected, unaccountable commissioners in Brussels. That's the thing they won't address. If you won't address it, then anything else that you say is suspect, because you simply don't have the power to alter most of the things that go on in this country. If you won't address it, it's not that you need to bang on about it. It is that a coherent programme for conservative reform of this country would have to contain as its centrepiece national independence and secession from the European Union. And you don't dare to do it, not least because a lot of your senior members are in favour of the European Union, which stands for ever closer integration. It's not a swimming pool that you get into and dive into and stay into. It's a fast-flowing river. You jump into it, it carries you along for miles before you even know where you are. And as for the euro, several senior members of your party, now advising David Cameron, including Kenneth Clark and Michael Heseltine, were and remain in favour of British membership of the European single currency. You simply cannot put yourself forward as a party which is opposed to European integration. It's not true, and that's why you have to keep quiet about it. You are committed to it. You got us in, you kept us in, and you want to keep us in. And as a result, you can't speak honestly about it. Euroscepticism is a fancy word for being rude about the EU in opposition and toadying to it when you're in government. It doesn't mean anything.
That's fine.
And
Hold on.
If you want to address all the issues that worry people, like education, on which you just blether amazingly. The grammar schools were destroyed.
Now let's not get ad hominem.
1065, issued by Anthony Crosland, who was the Labour Education Secretary. The fact that you didn't oppose it is interesting, but it's not actually the origin of the destruction of the only good state schools we ever had, which you did nothing about and still have no plans to do. Do you really think that parents trying to get their children educated, working hard probably with both parents out at work, are going to have time to set up schools in their spare time to educate their children? This is what they want the government to do.
Oh, please, please, let me just say something before you... Look, two things, three things. First of all, one thing, three things. First of all, if Peter has come here to say the European Union is the root of all evil, that's fine.
No.
He doesn't say that, okay?
Didn't say that. Didn't say I want to go back to the 1950s. I'll represent myself. I'll say what I think.
All right, please,
all right, hang on, Peter.
Please tell us what you think about the European Union.
No, don't.
Okay.
Don't.
I don't want to misrepresent.
No, we don't want that.
I don't want to misrepresent Peter Hitchens. What I'm trying to say, I'll try and say.
Hang on.
I'll try and say three very quick things. First of all, if Peter's starting point for every point is, well, you won't leave the European Union, that's fine. That at least sets the parameters of the debate. I will come out and take up Iain's challenge of honesty and say I don't want to leave the European Union. Okay? Is that all right? I don't want to leave the European Union. I know there are some constituents of mine in this room. If you want to leave the European Union, don't vote for me at the next election. Okay? I don't want to leave the European Union. Okay? Second thing. I've now forgotten.
This lady hasn't. Can I? Can you just wait a second for the microphone, please? There you go.
For clarification, could Mr. Dale and Mr. Vaizey tell us if they believe that a policy of leaving the European Union or severely or quite drastically renegotiating Britain's relationship with the European Union is a vote loser?
In a way.
Yes, I do. I think if we went into the next election promising to leave the European Union, it would be a vote loser.
Peter? Sorry, Iain.
I think the jury's out on that one, to be honest. I'm probably on slightly more Eurosceptic than Ed, in that I can contemplate circumstances where we could leave the European Union. Peter's right in the sense that it is a subject which you're not encouraged to discuss in the Conservative Party at the moment, for the simple reason that it's a subject which has caused divisions over the last 15 years. So I don't blame them for that at all. And there's a group called Better Off Out, which 8 Conservative MPs are members of, which the leadership has told them that while they remain members of it, they won't ever get a front bench position, which I think is thoroughly iniquitous when you have Ken Clarke in the shadow cabinet. But as to whether it's a vote loser, well, let's look at what happens in the European elections, because I think you're going to find then that UKIP, which is the normal repository for anti-European votes, is actually going to lose, and lose big time in June. So I suspect that will indicate that saying that you're going to come out of Europe is not the big vote winner that a lot of people think it might be.
More questions, please.
It is a single issue.
Yes, lady at the front.
Yes, I was at a Tory think tank meeting last week, and I don't agree that the only problem facing us is an economic one. At the policy exchange meeting last week, we had the chief of police and all the security people, and they said that the big problem facing us is terrorism, and that there are 100 Muslims in prison now awaiting trial for attempted terrorism. And I've been here for 5 days and I haven't heard one single word about that from any political commentator. So I'd like to have your opinion, please.
Well, what you find with any lobby group, and the police are classed as a lobby group here, is that they will always have their own thing which they think is the most important issue. But I think for the whole of the country, I mean, you'd have to be crazy to think it's not the economy that is the most important issue facing us at the moment, and will be for the next decade. Well, of course there are others. I mean, every government has to contend with all sorts of issues. Terrorism is a hugely important issue. Unfortunately, this government uses it as an issue with which to frighten us and to try and contain our civil liberties. And that, here, Peter and I will be absolutely at one on this. And I hope a Conservative government doesn't bow to the governmental machine which wants us to have identity cards, which wants to have 42 days detention for terror suspects without trial, and all that sort of thing, which as Conservatives, all three of us, I would think, that's what we're in politics and the sort of commentary to stop happening.